Yeah. Oh, dude, this is awesome.
How do you do that? How'd you do that?
Oh, sorry. The side.
The side.
There's a button on the side. So you can come up
Okay.
and I can circle. That's from my own view.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Oh, my God. I'm doing code reviews like this. Screw this shit. Oh, this is so cool.
Right? Isn't this the coolest thing you've ever seen?
Oh, my God. This is awesome.
There's Mago.
Suraj, can you imagine doing code review like this?
Oh, this
would be badass.
All right, so where were we? We were in...
Dude,
what were we doing?
Got them to buy that.
We were looking at something.
We were looking at...
Oh, I was looking at the importers.
Yeah, the importer. Yeah. Bring that up.
So, so all interactions... I'll give you an example. So we got all these business models, all these models here.
By models, you mean your typical data buckets?
Okay. Yeah. It's a type, right? It's an entity. And all the interactions are abstracted by the services, so all the business logic lives in here. So let's say I want to create a call. They all kind of expose the interface of a call service has the create, delete, modify, get by ID, etc. The standard kind of CRUD operations, and then all the typical logic like setting the date created, date modified, modify by, created by, all those signing an ID, figuring things out like that. All that lives in here, so you never duplicate that logic. I could create a call with the minimum fields defined, pass that to the call service, and say create.
And you create it in your data store.
Yeah. So it basically rounds up the data structure, but according to the business rules, and then adds it to the context.
In this scenario we're in right now, right? Would it be valid for the start date to be null?
Yeah.
And under what circumstances would it be populated already?
If you're setting the call for a future date. So I say I want this call to start at this date and have this duration.
Okay. So if I'm setting the call for a future date, I would have already set it in the call and pass it in.
Whereas if I'm creating one at the current date, I might just type in the note for the call.
So
if nothing comes back, we throw a key not found. If it comes back but belongs to a different user, then I throw a privilege not held. Otherwise,
but this doesn't belong in this package.
Where would you put that?
You need a different breakout. So I would break out with 2 layers. I would go at least a 3-layer architecture, which would be controller, repository or service, and then your store procedure or your access point or your DAO, whatever you want to call it, right?
Well, and really, entity framework becomes that DAO.
It does, and then you'd put the entity framework becomes a store procedure, the equivalent of the store procedure, right? Because it's going to give you back a model object.
Yeah,
it's going to give you a populated model object, but then your DAO would be taking care of it. So in other words, your DAO would call the entity framework, which would then give it back a populated model object. It would be missing some amount of data or something. You'd put in whatever you need to fix to make it right. And when it comes out of the DAO, it's in good state. Now the repository manipulates and does anything with it. What you don't want to do is have code that deals with that bleeding through your code base, because at this point, you've got boundary conditions. Your code is bleeding across each other. So what will happen is you're going to break on one end and it's going to affect things all the way across. So that's what you'll end up with, because your code is bleeding. It's like you don't have firm boundaries. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but all of this is kind of encapsulated. So you're arguing that basically, I'm going to try to come from your perspective, and I'm going to try to draw that basically this calls one.find ID should be wrapped in its own method that would contain this.
Yes, exactly. Right. Okay. So those are 2 things that belong together. The retrieving of the data would come. So if you'd had like a 3-layer, let's say you did something like a repository layer, your DAO, your entity, right? Your entity, which is what your call's context, you'd be making that call from within a DAO class. The DAO class would do context.calls.find ID, get me a call, and then it would do that thing at the bottom, call ID is equal to null, set it. So that when coming out of your DAO class, you have a fully populated, correctly populated object. Now your thing of a bad database or whatever the bad thing is has not bled across your code base. It's stopped at the DAO. The rest of your code won't have this start time anywhere. It'll only exist in that one spot. And if you ever fix your database or you ever switch to another database or whatever, you only change it in one spot. Whereas right now, you have it in I've seen it in at least 3 different spots. Right? So you want to be careful with that. I call it boundary bleeding, right? It bleeds across a boundary, which means the more you have that, it's harder to fix.
Because I guess this, this guy here, if I can this services group
Mhm.
here is kind of, I guess, both DAO and
Correct.
the
Yeah, you're blending things, right? You have what you're calling a service, and see, like for example, models.
but it also has business logic in here as well. Like if we pick something, trying to think of something that would have
Right, but this
um,
doesn't make sense because I wouldn't have model, service, and common as one package. Like I would expect the packages to all have.
well, common is the name. Common is like the namespace that it lives in,
Right. That's like a package.
and then so it becomes mago.common.services.
That's right. So what I would have expected to see is the same structure because these are each of these nodes, like the Mago common, right?
So Mago here, this
Mago
is the web
web.
application. So this has got the controllers and some web. This is all the web stuff lives here.
Okay. You need to come up with an overarching structure. Even if I understand you're in transition and you're in the process, but you need to first come up with what your vision will be, and it needs to be a very organized structure. And then you need to start transitioning as you make changes to that structure. Because right now,
Well, and I've been doing that, moving into this this kind of onion model. You got your controllers and its services, which abstract models.
yeah, but you've got like models over here, you got models over there, you got models over here.
Yeah, something. Yeah, oh yeah, people are out too.
Oh, here we go. You guys can.
That's good. We actually have to tear down for our thing upstairs, but you guys are awesome. Good job.
Man, this has actually been great for me too. So
Good. Glad to hear it.
Oh, dude.